And then eventually, after I worked for so long, from 14 and a half to 18, I was enlisted in the army. And as I said before, I went to Aldershot, and the 2 weeks you learnt. First week was all about the corps you were in, what they did and how long they had been established. The second week they taught you the paperwork and how to distribute the goods, and you had your exam, and then we moved then for 2 weeks military training, then learning how to strip the Bren guns and oil them and the rifles, and then you go out on target practice, firing at the targets, and then we would go back to the barracks, and they would have an inspection then of all your kit, and you had to fold your blankets, had to be folded in a square with the one blanket around them, so you had like a box, and you had to put that at the head of your bed. And then the officer and the sergeant and the corporal would come along and inspect the area was clean, and if it wasn't, he would flick it with his stick and tell the sergeant, throw it out the window. And make him do it again. And they had to do it again.
Oh my God.
And then in the morning, sometimes the corporals who were training you on the marching and rifle drill and all, 5 o'clock in the morning, they would bring a horse pipe in. And get you out of bed.
Oh my God.
And you used to have fun. Some fun, like you would do the necessary marching and all that, and then at the end of the 10 weeks they would then bring you in and tell you which area you were going to be stationed. Some stayed in England, some went to Eritrea, I went to Germany, and we landed in a place called Minden. Then we moved from Minden to Oldenburg, and from Oldenburg to Hamburg, where I was permanent. And we were stationed outside Hamburg in a place called Wonsbeck. And there you were given your job in the stores, whichever type of stores you wanted to. And then eventually I was put into the ration stores. So in the ration stores you had Germans working for you. I had a German driver. I was promoted and I had a German driver to take me 5 o'clock in the morning and go and pick up the bread rations and the rolls and go back, and we'd start putting that up for the officers' mess, sergeants' mess and the other ranks, and for the married families. Then we would go out then and we would pick up all the other things, vegetables, meat, butter, everything, take that back and do the same again, put it for the officers' mess, sergeants' mess, other ranks, then put it up the married families. Mm-hmm. And then Hans and I, we would go then, we would load the lorry and take all the food to the families around the area. And then we would come back to the barracks. But Hans had been bullied a bit by the military priest when he came back from the war.
Was he was German, I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Hans.
he was a German. He was on the Russian front and he got shot through the shoulder.
Oh, so he was also a World War II veteran.
Yeah, and through the knee.
Oh, wow.
And he used to limp, but he was a good driver. But he didn't like the military police, because when he came back, the military police, they were after the SS. And he was a big man. And they'd strip him and check if they had any SS tattoo under here. And he was really afraid of him. And then when we used to come back from the married families, there was a German patrol. They were dressed similar to the our military police, but they had yellow tops and they had a brown uniform. And they would stop the traffic, and I would tell him, stop. I must stop. I'm boss, you keep going. And I'd go and carry on till we got back. And then when we got back then, I would have to do different chores in the ration stores, and then we were free in the evening. We would go. We had a naffy. The naffy was a place where you could buy drinks and food.
I see.
And eventually we started where we used to go out to the German pubs and drink. And we had one pub we used regular, and we had that as our mess. All the corporals and sergeants would go there. We'd take our own bottles of whiskey and what have you, and we would have a night drinking there. And then the one time we went to another barracks, which was the Airborne, and I was with a friend of mine. His name was Kennedy, and he was from Manchester. And we went in. They had a dance there. I never danced. I was just sit and drink. Kennedy used to dance, and this day he was dancing, and this loudmouth Airborne troop come in. Who's the best man before I came in? And he tapped Kenny on the shoulder to excuse me dance. And Kenny said, "This is not an excuse me dance, you'll have to wait." And he said something to Kenny, and Kenny hit him and knocked him out. And then we had to run. Ran off from the streets with them chasing us.
Oh my God. So the violence was not ended after World War II.
So it was just quite funny, really. And then every so often you would have to go on what they called a confidence course, and you had to climb trees and go across ropes and down, and then you had to climb up a very high tree, up a rope ladder, and they had a platform, and what we called the death slide was a huge cable, and you fitted a pulley on, and then you swung out and went down. And when you reached the bottom, you had to be quick and let go and roll away from the wire.
Oh my God, wow.
They'd chop you in half.
Oh my God. Ooh.
And then they took us in. You had to go on a quarter of a mile running all the way. And this was in the winter. And they had the huge bomb craters, was full of water, had frozen over, and they had logs going across there. And you had a full kit, big pack, pouches with your ammunition and your rifle, and you run across, and then you carry on, and you get the next obstacle, go over that. Then you had the wall, where two of you threw him up, and then he straddled the wall and lifted you up until they'd all gone over. And you carry on running in, and then you had to swing across the water on a rope. You had to jump out for the rope and swing and make sure you didn't fall in. Then you had a tube going under the water and out the other side, and you had to crawl through that, and your pack used to get caught. And you had to wrap your rifle so it didn't get dirty, because
okay.
When you got out of there, then the final run was target practice.
Oh my God.
You lay down, and I did every now and again a target of a man would pop up, and you had to fire at it. And you had that every so often. And when I became, because I was NCO, I had to go to another barracks.
So NCO is non-commissioned officer?
Non-commissioned officer, yeah. I had to go to another barracks then, and we would be doing educational work and work about the army, and again training, rifle training, marching in the snow, out on parade in the snow, marching. But we had absolutely brilliant quarters. It was a huge mansion which the army had taken over, and we had proper beds and proper toilets. And we had, when we went for our food, we had tablecloths and Fräulein serving us with our food. It was very, very good. And we had a sergeant, what they call a SQMS, which is a squadron sergeant major, who was out of the Lancers, and he had a little dog, and he would have the dog doing different tricks, and then he would put a coin down on the floor, and he'd say to the dog, "Mind," and then he said to you, "Go and pick it up." And you're going to go down and and I met him again then. When I finished with the army, I had to do another 6 months. I had to do 2 years instead of 18 months because of the war in Korea.
Oh, okay.
So we had to stay on. But when I finished then, I had to do 5 years on a reserve.
I see.
So I used to have to, every year I had to report to a barracks in England, and then I was the instructor on drill, and we would compete against one another, and I won a cup with my squad, and I won a cup on the tug of war with my squad. They were very good squad.
Now, I have a question here. What are some conclusions or some lessons that you've learned from the military? I mean, something that, really stuck with you for the past years of your
mainly discipline. I would still think I was in the army. I would do everything like I did in the army. Discipline to do it. And I disciplined my children the same.
Oh, really?
Yes. They done what I told them to do, or else.
So they were all...
And, yes. And of course, you learn to respect other people and expect respect back from them. Because in Germany, apart from the young children, well, not young children, boys your age, who had served in the Hitler Youth, we had lots of problems with them. We would throw them off the trams when they started their nonsense, but the older people were very good. They said they didn't know about concentration camps, but obviously they did. But they were afraid to do anything because, like, say you was just a family and you was in the Hitler Youth, if your mother or father done something wrong, you would report them. And they could go to prison or go to concentration camp. They were that much indoctrinated. Another thing I learned to do after I came out was to drive, because I could drive there without a license, because we were stationed on the Hamburg-Lübeck Autobahn, and that was ours. We had all our tanks, lorries, everything on there, which we were in charge of. And you would have to go on guard in the night, because they used to come down and steal bits off the vehicles.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And another thing I did do, I had to go with 6 men armed to the teeth. They had rifles, Sten guns, and we had to escort the Centurion tanks from Hamburg to another city, and every so often you had to stop and be shunted into the sidings because they were so wide to allow the express trains to go through. And then as soon as you stopped, you sent them out and they had to go around all the tanks, keep going around until we moved again. And then we would, once we handed them over, then we got on a train and we'd come back to the barracks. But I did once unload one off a low loader.